I was a highway patrolman for 20 years, and I thought I'd seen it all: high-speed chases, gunfights, near-death encounters. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened during the summer of 2018. It was the graveyard shift, that time of night when the highway is stripped of its daytime masks. The world grows quiet, and every distant hum or flicker of light demands your attention. I was parked near mile marker 62, radar gun in hand, sipping tepid coffee and listening to the slow drone of routine dispatch chatter. A typical night, until it wasn't. A sudden crackle came over the radio: "Any available units near Route 18, we have a 10 to 90. I frowned. I'd never heard that code before. "HQ, this is Unit 504. What's a 10 to 90? My question met only static. "HQ?" Still nothing, just a faint hiss. Then a set of coordinates flickered onto my patrol car's computer screen. An out-of-the-way patch of woodland, no trails or known roads leading in. I radioed my supervisor, confusion turning to unease. "Sarge, HQ just gave me coordinates and mentioned a 10 to 90. What's the protocol?" His reply was sharp. "Ignore it, 504. Not for you." "But..." "Drop it," he snapped, then cut off. I tried to shake it off. Orders were orders. The rest of the night dragged. Near 3 a.m., exhaustion gnawed at me, so I pulled into a dingy old donut shop, the kind that's always half-lit and smells faintly of bleach and overboiled coffee. Inside, a man stood behind the counter. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and his eyes never quite focused on me. "Coffee and 2 glazed," I said, feeling a prickle of discomfort under his gaze. He moved stiffly, handing me my order. The overhead light flickered, and in that brief darkness, I thought I saw his lips curve into a too broad grin. When the light steadied, he wore only a blank expression. "Long night?" he asked in a voice like brittle leaves. "Graveyard shift," I managed, forcing a laugh. He said nothing more, just stared as I left, the bell above the door tolling softly behind me. Back in my cruiser, as I sipped the bitter coffee he'd poured, the radio crackled again. "Help me," someone whispered. The voice was distant and distorted, like it had traveled through layers of static and wind. "HQ, did someone just broadcast a distress call?" Silence. Only the hum of empty airwaves. I tried my supervisor. Nothing. Against my better judgment, I checked those coordinates still glowing on my screen. I reasoned it must have been some lost hiker, some emergency. Following orders or not, I couldn't ignore a plea for help. The drive was long and winding, leading me off the known map. The further I went, the quieter it got. No insects, no rustle of small creatures, just the whisper of my tires on cracked asphalt. Eventually, the road gave way to dirt, and the trees crowded in, their silhouettes menacing under a thin moon. The coordinates led me to a clearing that wasn't on any of my charts. I stepped out, hand on my holstered gun, flashlight beam slicing through the stagnant darkness. The air felt thick, charged. When I radioed in again, static answered. A twig snapped behind me. I spun, flashlight glaring at empty air. Another snap, closer. I called out, voice echoing oddly. Something flickered at the edge of my vision, a shape, crouched low to the ground. I shouted a warning, but it vanished before my beam could steady. Then the radio screeched. "Help me," it roared, as if screamed from inside my skull. I dropped it, ears ringing. A heavy blow struck the back of my head, and everything went black. I woke tied to a tree, ropes biting into my wrists. 3 hooded figures stood in a half-circle, whispering in a language that crackled like static over old speakers. My flashlight lay smashed on the ground. They wore no identifying marks, no badges or symbols. Just hoods and silence. One stepped closer. "Why did you come?" The voice was low, almost mechanical. I got a call. Someone needed help, I stammered, trying to sound calm. No response, just more whispers between them. Finally, the leader said, "Let him go." I braced for a trick, but one of them cut my bonds. My legs wobbled as I stood, heart pounding. They said nothing else, just watched me with blank intensity. I reached for my gun. It was gone. The leader raised a hand, and somehow I understood, "Leave now." I stumbled back through the trees, branches scratching my uniform. I caught glimpses of shapes flitting between trunks, more of them. Their pale faces hovered in the darkness, just beyond my flashlight's memory. "Don't come back," they whispered, voices overlapping like radio static. "Don't come back." I found my cruiser miraculously undamaged, engine purring to life as if nothing had happened. I drove like a madman until I hit the main road, heart hammering. At dawn, I told my supervisor. He shrugged it off, calling it exhaustion or stress. Ordered me to take a few days off. But I know what I saw. The radio codes that made no sense, the donut shop man with dead eyes, the hooded figures in the woods, none of it added up. A week later, off duty at home, I stared at my old patrol radio on the kitchen table. I'd kept it as a souvenir. Late that night, it crackled softly, though the power switch was off. "Help me," the voice whispered again. Softer, sadder. Sometimes I think I see that pale donut shop clerk in my neighborhood, lingering at street corners. Sometimes I catch a fleeting glimpse of a hooded figure in my rearview mirror. And late, when the world sleeps, the radio murmurs my name. I promised myself I'd never return to those woods, but as the years pass, the mystery gnaws at me. Why let me go? Who were they? And what the hell was a 10 to 90? Tonight, I've decided. I'm going back. I don't know what I'll find. Maybe nothing, maybe answers, or maybe something worse. But I can't let it rest. The quiet forest, the eerie whispers, the code that didn't exist in any manual, I need to understand. If you don't hear from me again, remember this: out there in the dark, along forgotten roads, are secrets older than any codebook. Don't trust every call for help. Sometimes, the voices on the other end aren't human. I'm so cold. I'm a U.S. Forest Service officer. What you're about to read comes from a notebook I found while out on patrol in the Hiawatha National Forest. My supervisor told me to burn it, to prevent any copycat explorers from trying to find what the victim found. But I can't just toss it away. Maybe these words will warn someone else. If you're reading this, heed the warning: don't be reckless, don't wander unprepared, and know that Mother Nature can't always protect her children. If you're reading this, it's found me. My fire's almost gone, and I'm out of matches. I'm so cold. It started simply enough. I wanted to honor my father with one last hunting trip, just like we used to when I was a boy. He died too young, and I hoped to feel him near me out here in these woods. Little did I know that I was the one being hunted. 3 weeks ago, my Labrador Nikita and I drove deep into the forest, far beyond the main roads. It was mid-December, muzzleloader season, and I'd taken all my vacation hours for this. I had Sub-Zero gear, a clean muzzleload rifle, and my old 2005 Buick Rendezvous to get me there. I set up camp in a remote spot, about a 45-minute drive off the nearest road. Snow had started to fall, but that felt normal for the time of year. When I let Kita out to roam, her reaction unsettled me. Every hair on her body bristled. She froze, then growled, stiff-legged, as if she smelled something awful. Without a sound, she slunk back to the car, whining. I figured maybe she caught the scent of a bear or a coyote. After all, she'd never been this deep before. I thought she'd adjust. The first couple of weeks went smoothly. Kita and I enjoyed the crisp air, the quiet, the occasional wildlife. A raccoon in a tree watched us indifferently. The trouble began when dusk fell. That's when I heard the first whistle, a strange, low-hi-lo tune. I brushed it off, but Kita was tense, so we headed back to camp. Another whistle came, closer. My steps quickened. A third whistle practically breathed down my neck by the time I reached my campsite at a run. I tripped on a hidden root, a sickening crack jolted up my leg, and I knew something in my ankle had broken. Hobbling, I saw my car was torn to shreds, windows smashed, tires slashed, seats ripped apart. Whatever was out there wanted me trapped. I got a fire going, hoping morning's light would help me fix something, anything. I tried not to think about my throbbing ankle or Kita's fearful eyes. As I cooked a hot dog over the flames, Kita's ears perked straight up. She stared past the car, low growl rumbling from her chest. The fire's warmth seemed to ebb, the world draining of color. Then that whistle again, low-hi-lo, chilled my blood. Hand on my pistol, I hobbled toward the sound, hoping maybe it was a lost hiker. The snow squeaked under my boots, and the cold gnawed at my bones. At the back of the rendezvous, I found strange prints, too large for a dog, too oddly spaced and webbed. They led off toward the pond where I'd gotten water. The campfire was sputtering behind me, Kita whining softly. I decided to retreat, to try again in the morning. That night, I started the kerosene heater in my tent and tried to sleep. Kita lay beside me, covered in my spare clothes, her body trembling. The whistle came again and again. Branches snapped outside, something circled our camp. But it never came closer than 20 feet. I clutched my pistol and prayed for dawn. Morning revealed the car was beyond hope. No leaving by vehicle now. My supplies were raided, most of my food gone, my spare wood missing. The whistler had no intention of letting me go. My ankle screamed with pain. On day 4, things worsened. The whistler prowled just outside that invisible boundary. Kita grew weaker. One afternoon, she came back soaked, as if she'd fallen through thin ice at the pond. I'd left her alone too long, but I couldn't keep up. She began coughing, breathing wetly, her strength fading. My phone died, no signal anyway. My satellite phone vanished, stolen by the whistler, I guess. I tried building a makeshift insulation around the tent with snow and pine branches. The whistler's prints circled ever closer, now just 15 feet away. With no more kerosene, Kita and I huddled for warmth. I'd strike a match now and then for a brief taste of heat, but it was never enough. My toes went numb, my nose burned with frostbite. -20 degrees by my old thermometer. Kita coughed through the night, her lungs rattling like paper bags. She died in her sleep, and I wept silently, freezing tears clinging to my face. Desperate, I tried something unspeakable. I cut Kita open, hoping her body's warmth might save me. But Star Wars lied. There was no warmth, only gore and cold death. I'm so sorry, Kita. I'm just so hungry. My feet are blackened stumps now. Every breath is agony. The whistler taunts me with that hellish tune. I tried to leave, to find the road, but on my wounded ankle, I only circled back to camp. Eventually, I stumbled onto the pond and fell through the ice. Frozen water stabbed like knives, and I managed to crawl back here. I burned my last clothes for heat. The whistler stepped into view, a hulking, furry shape, jaws parted, singing its low-hi-lo tune. Its eyes gleamed with a hunger beyond hunger, a predator's glee at my helplessness. I'm so weak I can't lift my pistol anymore. I'm just so cold. My fire is just embers now. I'm out of matches. I can hear it breathing outside, smell its rank musk. I'm done. This is the last thing I'll ever write. It's looking at me, jaws open, the whistle rolling out of its throat. Maybe I'll embrace it, that monstrous warmth. I'm so cold. Maybe I should have followed orders and destroyed this note. But I can't ignore it. If you read this, please, don't go into the winter woods unprepared. Nature is both beautiful and indifferent. And if you ever hear a low high-low whistle out there, run. Run, and don't look back.